Hello and a warm welcome from me to our last panel discussion today. First of all, big congratulations to all of you who stayed with us towards the end. Staying towards the end of the second day of the conference should be awarded, I believe, with a substantial investment in your startups and companies. But since I don't have the power to do that or give any awards, we'll try to cheer you up with a lively discussion. We are going to discuss blockchain and the trust, if we have the trust in the technology that was supposed to decentralize trust. This panel is organized by the Coalition for Polish Innovation, and I am proud to share the stage with the people who have an experience in developing the technology, writing about it, and introducing it to the market. So let me introduce you briefly to our speakers. First of all is Grzegorz Pawlicki from PKO Bank Polski. Yep.
Hi, hello, nice to meet you. My name is Grzegorz, I'm head of innovation at PKO Bank Polski. I'm responsible for the Let's Fintech with PKO Bank Polski acceleration program, and also we developed the blockchain competence center with a couple of people and have a quite experience in this area, so I'm happy to share it.
Then we have Karolina Marzantowicz.
Hi, I'm Karolina. I'm Chief Technology Officer at IBM for Central Eastern Europe, and I'm also leading the blockchain practice in the whole region. And in terms of my expertise, it's more practical, technical, from the implementation part.
Richard Kastelein, who I don't think you need introducing because
Hi,
you just
I think everybody
speaking.
knows who I am. I just said it before.
Hi, my name is Piotr Rutkowski. A few months ago, I was engaged by the Minister of Digital Affairs to advise the policy on DLT and blockchain, and I'm hosting the working group in the ministry which try to contact industry and administration in blockchain issues.
Hi, my name is Ewa Drygalska, and I'm working at the Polish-Japanese Academy of Computer Science in Warsaw, but I also work for the Chopin Museum as well as AI startups, so I wear many hats, and I'm interested in critical new media and critical approach to technologies, and thank you for inviting us. And today I'm representing the foundation of Centrum Cyfrowe.
And my name is Bartłomiej Paszcza. I come from the civic society NGO Klub Jagielloński and a think tank where I'm working on science, technology and society affairs. So first, before I sort of make any introductions, which are usually not the most interesting part, I would like to ask you, would you recommend investing in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies for that matter? I know the answer might be different, so feel free to highlight the differences.
So let me start, I don't feel kind of the responsible and equipped, to advise other people, especially about the investment, because it's you need to take responsibility what the people will do.
Or maybe frame it otherwise. Would you invest in Bitcoin?
And I'm passionate about blockchain generally, including cryptocurrency from the technological point of view, in cryptography, which is behind this, and especially with the development of all new algorithms, which really speed up since the Bitcoin arrived to the market. So I think for me, it's enough.
I wouldn't invest in Bitcoin back in 2010, neither 2019, or either a stock market or any currency speculation. It's just I'm not a gambler personality, but I hope we can talk about the protocols underneath the tokens. So this is what really excites me.
I'm not investing in cryptocurrencies, but I'm investing recently a lot of my time, a lot of my expensive consulting time working for administration now. So I think it is real investment.
Okay, so as a representative for the bank, it's a tricky question, like to give the investment strategy. So I can state as a representative of the biggest Polish bank, I recommend to, and now my colleagues are opening the position of the Bitcoin. Yeah, so I'm joking, of course. Now it's in the down, so probably it's a time to do something, but personally I'm not investing in this currency, but it relies on the different behavior on the market, like STO, so it can be connected with the actually the value later on, but we never know.
You know, especially looking at the recent thief, which took place on one of the biggest crypto currency exchanges.
Good. Personally, I don't give advice to people on anything like investment-wise. I think it's not my place to do that. I've always tried to stay away from the investment part of the projects that I worked on. Having said that, I have probably about 40 cryptocurrencies that I earned through helping people raise money. And to me, there's two different questions here. There's like, do you want to invest in cryptocurrency as someone speculating like Forex? Or do you want to invest in a project that you think has genuine social value, and they're going to bring forth a proposition with a great team that's going to work on, say, banking for the bankless in Africa, and you're contributing as an investor to something that you believe in. Those are two different things. So I think that, I have invested in projects that do have social value in the past, or things that I believe in. I have honestly done that, but I'm not really much of a let's say a crypto trader.
Right, that's an interesting spectrum of opinions. Now, the reason I wanted to ask this question is because, well, that's just my feeling, but my feeling is that a discussion about Bitcoin and then blockchain, obviously, as a technology underlying it, has dramatically changed in the last year and a half. Some of it had to do with the value of Bitcoin as translated to dollars, obviously. Which sort of we saw a huge growth and then a sudden drop. But on the other hand, we've seen rapid development of blockchain as a technology incorporated in other areas of life than just cryptocurrencies, as Richard mentioned before. But what draws my attention is the fact that we are talking about essentially two slightly different technologies under one name. So there is the difference between the public and private blockchain. And I believe, well, the public blockchain is the one that was originally promising a dramatic change in the way that we communicate, that we make contracts, that we execute the contracts. Because it is the force behind decentralizing trust, where everyone who keeps the decentralized ledger and develops it is part of the trust network. But the enterprise blockchain, which has become a new trend, as Richard mentioned in our email conversation before, is in many cases based on a private blockchain, which contains the same technology behind it, meaning some form of a ledger, cryptography, means of communication of this ledger, but it sort of keeps the servers under one hat, not as decentralized as the public blockchain seems. And this is very interesting because one of my activities is being a postgraduate researcher at the Web Science Institute in Southampton, and there is the story of the web that is inherently interesting because it started off as the web is for everyone. The web will allow us all to communicate freely, to create websites and upload our own stuff and talk with other people. And then we find ourselves 30 years later with essentially Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, or whatever other social media we use, dominating the space, being the gatekeepers to knowledge in large part. Do you see that this enterprise trend is going sort of the same way, or not?
I'd like to answer that question on a couple of layers. I mentioned in my talk that, people talk about public blockchains as this decentralized sort of utopia, but the fact of the matter is having that hack just happen where 40 million got stolen from Binance last week. There was actually serious talk between the Chinese miners and Binance to reverse the blockchain using over 51% of the power. That's really awkward. On one thing, Chinese have an overwhelmingly massive amount of control of the mining, probably way more than 50% anyway. Secondly, I also mentioned that the group who works on blockchain is a small group and that half the market cap is owned by less than 1,000 people. So there's no magic in all of this, but I think the technology that where it starts to get interesting is something should be done off-chain. You know, some things need to remain private. So you have technologies such as sharding, you have off-chain technologies, you know, you have Ripple, you have a lot of different ways of interacting with public chains and private blockchains, and you have hybrid chains as well. So there's, to me, again, it comes back to this thing, you know, public and private blockchains is kind of like 2017, and now we're like moving on to this next phase of, we got at least 30 different, 30 different consensus mechanisms now. Proof of stake is moving forward. So, yeah, I think I think that there's going to be some interesting solutions coming in the future. So
you're confident that the blockchain is developing in a good direction. So it's just next step of development.
It's developing good and bad directions. I mean, you got to look at the root of this. The root of blockchain and Bitcoin comes from the crypto anarchist movement, right? I mean, it's people who don't they hang out in the dark web, and it's just like some dodgy people in it. There's people that are absolutely fighting against private blockchains and that refuse to, you know. So there's polar opposites. There's lots of movements going on in many different directions. But there's a lot of good stuff going on, and that's, you know, what I like to highlight anyway. And whether that's private or public or hybrid or both, you know, whether they use it or not, the important thing is the technology is being used, and it's being used in many good ways right now.
Grzegorz?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, there's a small difference now between decentralized and centralized. As you said, that like 80% of the computing power of Bitcoin is concentrated in the same space. Like the Ethereum, the 4 pools are also not to be talked as a purely decentralized network. And this is one reason. The second reason, in my opinion, is the adoption of the actual real business cases on the public network that are not ready yet, except of the cryptocurrency and speculation, actually, and the currency market, not the real business cases. That's why the private blockchain, because of the trust of the public, is not in the organizations, or organizations started to develop the private one to build for the particular business processes like trade finance or some other settlement units. So that's why they don't trust to the public one and the computing power on all this mining stuff, but develop the private one, which are more scalable for their purposes. So I think the growth will be in this private space. And in the public, but in different type of consensus mechanisms, as I can tell later, we used with for example, Hyperledger.
And I think that we have also misuse in many cases the words like private, public. What does it really mean? We use many public services in generally, but to use them like, I don't know, education, healthcare, we need to identify ourselves, yeah? So, sometimes doing this distinction like permissionless or permissioned maybe is more accurate, yeah? Or so I think I will not split the blockchain networks just, that they are private and public. And what does it mean? Maybe, public by permissioned. Public, I mean, available for everyone, but maybe you will need to register. And we see those trends that the importance of privacy, even in the public networks, is starting to increase, yeah? We see the Zcash in generally addressing the zero knowledge proof algorithms, which address importance of the privacy in the networks.
That's a nice link to the history of the web, by the way, the privacy issue. All right.
I think that we should take into account that blockchain is one of the disruptive technologies, one of the few different. And if we try to predict what will happen, we should take into account the impact of other technologies as well. I mean, artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, everything will be correlate. So it is very difficult to predict. If you have the magic ball, we can only dream about the future. We don't know exactly what will happen. And especially that blockchain in particular is on the quite early stage of the development, so it's not mature technology as yet.
As much as we are disillusioned with the current state of internet, and some people would even go as far to say that internet is dead. There was Peter Sunde, the co-founder of the Pirate Bay. The blockchain technology, or DTL, it's still in its nascence, and I think it does carry a certain amount of techno-optimistic promise. It is true that private blockchains are mostly owned by big players such as Microsoft or Oracle, and they want to dominate the market. And for us, that means that we have to confine our trust to digital platforms, and that's the question if we really want to do it or not. On the other hand, in order to strengthen the public blockchain, I think we need much more than just technology. There are issues of trust and the value creation, but what I think is really interesting is that at the core of the blockchain technology is that the open source model that is really challenged under the current digital capitalism is actually extended and beyond the software or the cloud computing. And it does add some financial incentive, so it might serve as a form of an alternative or mixed solution. And this time, it might actually work if we do it right.
Just short at Vocem, I would like to put clarification what Microsoft and Oracle, for example, are doing in terms of the blockchain. They are putting blockchain as a service using in majority open source blockchains, so it can be Ethereum or Hyperledger stock, but they are not trying to dominate market with their own commercial solutions.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was going to make the same point, actually. I think that if you got to look at the roots of our ecosystem as well, is that it's open source roots, and everybody kind of had to stick with that. And you can see that also with the movement around R3, and the bankers all got together at one point and tried to create a proprietary version of blockchain to work on, and the Europeans and the Americans could never meet. So it broke apart because Corda was going to be, the Americans wanted proprietary, and the Europeans wanted to have open source. So, but I think the open source won. I think Hyperledger is a good example. Intel's in there, IBM's in there, Microsoft, Oracle, they're all on board. And I could see them, grinning, because they're essentially companies that grew because of intellectual property and licensing, and this whole new ecosystem is the antithesis of that in a way. So, but they have ambitions for sure to control. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think we're going to come back to that topic in a moment. But first, I wanted to ask Grzegorz and Karolina, because your companies are producing solutions which are using blockchain. Could you give us an example of a solution that your companies are creating which incorporates blockchain as part of it, and why blockchain is needed in that solution? What's the role of it?
Yeah, there were like lots of hype on blockchain. Everybody were doing things on blockchain, but actually a few of them appear on the market and solve a real business issue. So like you said, all the R3 Corda systems, Ripple in the banking sector. They were set up to just speed up and do the different clarification between settlements between the banks. And actually we use it implementing the blockchain in the quite simple space as delivering the documents to our customers and the proof that they are durable and unchangeable and undeletable. So we use the technology as is it written in the blockchain and hashed and secured, so nobody can change it, or you have a proof that something had happened with the document. So we use it as a regulatory issue. We implemented the platform using the Hyperledger Fabric platform. And we store the documents of the regulation and tariffs and provision for our customers together with the KIR, which is Polish settlement unit, and also in our databases on the blockchain nodes, and send to the customers the confirmation that it's secured. So it solves us a regulatory issue that at the moment we don't have to send the papers, waste a lot of trees, send the CDs, because lots of our customers even don't have the CD reader, so it's like, and it's quite big documents. We send 80 pages of tariffs, and we are obliged to do it by the regulatory issue, and we have to deliver it on the durable medium, so unchangeable, which is now at the moment everybody told us the only durable medium is a paper. Yeah, now we change the meaning. We experiment with the blockchain, and actually we saved a lot of money and the time, and it was the biggest blockchain commercial implementation in Europe concerning the customer amount, because it faced 5 million customers in our bank. So we were like noticed by the Europe, by the region, and this was one of the few examples. Now we use the private one, the private blockchain between us and between the settlement unit, and they are open for other banks and other nodes at the moment. But we don't like stop on this stage. We experiment with the other solution in different areas, like we think about some tokenization of assets, and also submitting the proof of the payments. Probably soon we will present our solution on the private, on the public blockchain to confirm the payment confirmation.
All right, Karolina?
Yeah, so I will add some other examples on top of those which we did together with for PKO BP. But what is really nice about the blockchain implementation, that this technology pushes collaboration. That many different parties, organizations, they need to collaborate even during the implementation phase, many different vendors and ecosystems, so I think this is also a nice thing. So one example from Polish market also, it's e-voting for Polish Securities Depository, e-voting for which can be used for the general shareholders meeting. Yeah, and we know that it's during the testing. I saw yesterday on LinkedIn that Rafał from KDPW, announced that it's open right now for the companies for testing. Those who are on the Warsaw Stock Exchange or for any others, they can use the platform. So I think it's a nice example. It uses the private blockchain. Yeah, many different participants from the network, including the regulatory, financial, Polish regulator. So I think it's a nice example, and also it provides, the immutability of the votes, and a lot of benefits from everybody, for the emittents, for the shareholders, and for the regulatories. And also speed up with the process. So majority of the those retail shareholders, they do not vote in generally. They do not come for the general shareholders meetings. And right now
we have that problem in our society as well.
And if the platform will be available, over the internet, then they will kind of, it will be easier for them to really execute their rights, to really impact, the company they co-own. Yeah. But another example from another space, for the public blockchain, for example. So we introduced to the market recently the WorldWired platform. It's like a competition, we can say, to the SWIFT for the multi-currency, international transfers. The value will be from the international transfers, not from the, you can use it even for the national, for one currency transfers, but the value and the lower costs, the participating banks or the different companies, they will gain from the international money transfers. So this is another example, and it uses the Stellar blockchain, which is public blockchain, and also we have few banks, international big banks, majority of them from Asia participating in the network, but also there is some interest from the Polish players in this platform.
That's good that we brought it back to Poland, because now I want to ask the Piotr, who is an advisor to the ministry, because last year was pretty intense in Poland in terms of blockchain and looking from a government perspective. On the one hand, we had a few initiatives endorsing blockchains. One was mentioned about the stock exchange, but there were also others and legislative proposals. On the other hand, we've seen a sort of an exodus of blockchain-related companies, some cryptocurrency stock exchanges, but also other companies developing blockchain to other countries. So what shall we do to avert that? Is the government really pro-blockchain, or does it have its pros and cons?
I think this working group is the solution, but of course, if the idea for the startup is good enough to start a company abroad, is not bad. Because that's at the same time, at least few of these companies from the blockchain market decided to come back to Poland with new projects, and it is very good because they are coming with experience, with mature solutions, and they can discuss with potential customers on the same level as the big IT corporations which are offering the worldwide projects. So we started with the new form of this working group in January. About more than 100 stakeholders are participating in this group. We are working in the thematic teams. The most interesting works are related to the financial market. So we are working on the securities, we are working on the financial instruments, payment instruments, we are working on identification systems, and we have also thematic sectorial working groups for the real estate, for the healthcare industry, for the energy industry, for the insurance industry, and we have also the team which is working which group the universities, which working on the education issues, how to communicate blockchain, how to educate about the blockchain. So in terms of business, the most interesting issues are related to the securities probably. So we try to establish the legal and regulatory environment together with the technology providers. So we probably will offer the interesting solutions for the companies from the market. It is explanation of our cooperation with the Warsaw Stock Exchange. We work together. The intention is to work together about the private market idea and the solutions which will be useful for not only for the capital market, but also for the administration in terms of because from the technical point of view, the solutions are similar. And the Warsaw Stock Exchange, the project is under development. I think that we will hear some news about it in the very near future.
So we will see the next steps in that matter. If I may start a question, and because that's time is running out, so my last question comes to Eva and Richard on a topic that we've sort of barely touched, but I would like to hear your view. So some people are arguing that the hope of decentralized trust is moving towards, well, we are still having trust, but we have to trust in the sort of technology, because obviously even if it's based open source, the services which are built on top of it, not every company will have the resources to verify that code and everything. So there's an essence of trust in that. Do you think that the development of blockchain in all these areas that we've spoken about is a good way from a society perspective, or are there certain dangers in putting trust in not in the institutions but in the technology and those who develop it?
Well, the technology is very young, so there is a race, obviously. a lot of different, especially since we put 26 billion euro or dollars into the blockchain ecosystem through the ICO movement. It's a lot of money that was sort of self-generated through the rise of Bitcoin in value, and a lot of that got pumped back in. So there's been a lot of money. There's a lot of different blockchain projects going, and I welcome that. I think it's a lot different because, you know, the original ethos of the early blockchain was open source. It was non-profit foundation. It was driven on a different type of philosophy than, say, a P&L in a normal business or a corporate environment. So a lot of that ethos still runs true. And, you know, even if a project fails, if the code is open source, it's not really a failure in the same way, because people can pick up that code and do something with it, or people can join that code. And there's going to be a process where there's going to be, it's almost overwhelming how much there is right now. But, you know, I think it's important to have a competitive environment. I wouldn't like to see Microsoft developing the one proprietary code that everybody uses for blockchain. I don't think we've already been through that with Windows, right? So this is the magic of open source. And I've been in the open source movement since the early 2000s. And one of the jokes, actually, we had was the only currency we have is ego, because you build stuff and people use it, and that's cool, right? That feels good. And suddenly, when this whole new ecosystem evolved, we had a way to fund open source projects. That was the magic. That was the beauty in the beginning. That was the utopian ideological vision, and of course, everything kind of changed as it moved on and reality hit, and bad people got involved and money got in the picture, and then the institutions came in, and now we're seeing also a hybrid. It's kind of a joining of the systems. This is where public and private are permission and permissionless, or you know, we're seeing, okay, well, this is the way we want to do things. So you see the institutional investors saying, we like security token offerings because that gives us equity, which we like. That gives us intellectual property. That gives us a corporation with a P&L and growth and all the things that we're used to. So they don't really understand the model of the value in a non-profit foundation and let's say utility token-driven ecosystem. It doesn't work for them.
All right, Eva, final comment.
Well, just to add to Piotr, it was a pleasant surprise to see that just recently, National Center of Research and Development, they revealed a proposal of their tech strategy called Infostrateg, and they are they're betting heavily on AI and also Bitcoin, and they're dedicating. I think that was about 800 million Polish zloty to developing this technology. And in case of blockchain, they are dedicating this special area to develop solutions for smart contracts for enterprise implementation, not administrative yet. But I hope that will change soon. And in terms of trust, well, that's I think that's a big challenge for education again. And this is the area where really interdisciplinary research groups and interdisciplinary cooperation it's becoming really important, as we really need people to educate and talk about trust and how we want to build this consensus, how we imagine trust. So there's a lot of work to do.
Definitely, we need a lot of education on trust, especially that it's changing as we've seen. I would like to thank all my panelists. Please give a round of applause to them and for sharing their views. And also thank you all for staying with us on behalf of the organizer of the panel, the Coalition of the Polish Innovation as well. I believe someone is going to take over to take some final thoughts, but I would once again like to thank you all. Thank you.